This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, it's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. The 1980s is rightfully nicknamed the second golden age of tag team wrestling, but unfortunately this abundance of awesomeness meant not every team got to hold championship gold. However, as we're about to see, there were tag teams that almost came close. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at four 80s WWF tag teams that would have held the tag titles if it wasn't for circumstances beyond their control. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. In these cases, it's extremely likely these teams would have held the WWF Tag Team Championship, only for the fickle finger of fate, or some might argue the middle finger of fate, to intervene. The Killer Bees. The team of jumping Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair was a perfect duo, whether it was putting on exciting tag team matches on the undercard or vying for the WWF Tag Team Championship. Both men had held tag team gold before, with Brunzell best known for his run with Greg Gagne as AWA World Tag Team Champions, the High Flyers, and Blair holding regional tag team titles. Brunzell and Blair nicknamed themselves the Killer Bees as an homage to the NFL team the Miami Dolphins nicknamed for its defense. The duo also took a page from the playbook of former wrestler Billy Red Lyons. Blair would recall, Billy Red Lyons was interviewing us, and before the interview he says, "You know what we used to do? I remember this old thing. You guys are perfect. You're about the same size. We used to take masks and do this little switch deal." Vince McMahon approved the modification to their act, with the Killer Bees throwing on masks at pivotal moments during their matches to counteract underhanded tactics by their heel opponents. The mask move became known as Mask Confusion, and while heels complained about the Killer Bees tactic, it was a classic example of babyfaces fighting fire with fire. Although Brunzell and Blair might seem like one of the many teams that were good, just not good enough to rise into the rarefied air of champions, both men claimed they were promised a run with the Tag Team Championship. According to Brunzell, "I thought we did well, and we were received well by the public. I think the only thing that held us back was Vince didn't really like us individually." Blair claims that the Bees were promised a run with the tag straps. As noted in the book, The Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the tag teams, according to Blair, WWF booker George Scott promised them the tag team titles twice as well. Blair appeared on the two-man power trip of wrestling, sharing his side of the story. "I quit Vince at WrestleMania 5 after he told us we were going to win the titles on 3 different occasions. Vince said it once, and the late great George Scott said it to us twice. We saw the writing on the wall with all of the tag teams coming in at that time, and I decided I wanted to be a businessman, and I was just too beat up. Plus, I wanted to spend time with my wife." Although the Killer Bees never held the WWF Tag Team Championship and seem to have had a mixed experience in the company, both men got along well, stating they never had an argument during their time together in the WWF. The CanAm Connection. Tom Zank and Rick Martel had everything an 80s tag team needed. The good-looking and talented duo seemed like a lock for a run at the top, checking all the boxes for a babyface championship team. They were exciting to watch in the ring. They had the looks for bringing in female fans, much like teams such as the Rock and Roll Express or the Fabulous Ones, and they had the toughness fans expected from a babyface team. Indeed, the CanAm Connection scored one impressive win after another and seemed headed for the top. Zank would remark, "It took just 6 months to get over in the WWF. We burned the Rougeaus, we burned Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. They got a tryout, but we got the gig. We had the look. Everything. They would put us on after Hogan to pop the crowd. We were in the main event, and they always had us go on last. They couldn't follow us, only with Orndorff and Hogan." Rick Martel once commented on the team's potential. "To this day, Tom and I, had we stayed together, we would have been one of the biggest tag teams of all time. I can say that still." Unfortunately, you can't have a tag team with only one person, so Zank's exit in the summer of 1987 put a finish to the promising team. During a 2000 interview with Sports Radio 504 Between the Ropes, Zank discussed why he left the WWF. "I quit because Martel signed his own deal with the WWF. The only money part in my contract was $50 a night for TV." Rick Martel has a different take on things. "Every day, even if you're injured, you've got to keep going. I think that was too much for him. And also the pressure of wrestling in front of big crowds and always performing to your top level. He couldn't take that. Whatever the reason for Zank splitting, it's likely the CanAm Express would have had a run with the tag team gold. In fact, the WWF seemed to go to Plan B when Zank took off, replacing him with Tito Santana and booking Martel and Santana together as Strikeforce. Strikeforce eventually captured the WWF Tag Team Championship in 1987, defeating the Hart Foundation and holding the titles a respectable 5 months before Demolition toppled them for the belts. at WrestleMania 4. Tom Zank passed away in 2017 at age 59. The Rockers. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty were one of the few highlights left in the American Wrestling Association in the late 80s. Working as the Midnight Rockers, they seemed destined for better things than working in a promotion on life support. However, Shawn and Marty's hard-partying ways reportedly led to their quick exit from the WWF. Fortunately, the team got a second chance, and they made the most of this opportunity, dazzling the fans with matches against heel acts ranging from monsters like the Twin Towers, the Big Boss Man and Akeem, and technical teams such as the Brainbusters, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, and the Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Michaels and Jannetty's fast-paced offense was a sight to behold, and like other Pretty Boy teams, they had plenty of female fans as well. Tag Team Gold seemed to be in the cards for the Rockers, and at one point the two actually captured the WWF Tag Team Championship. On October 30th, 1990, the Rockers battled WWF Tag Team Champions, the Hart Foundation, in a 2 out of 3 falls match, a bout which on paper should have been an instant classic. Regrettably, the top rope broke early in the match, preventing both teams from performing some of their signature moves. As Bret Hart recalls in his memoir Hitman, the match was taped and could be easily edited, but the ref, Freddie Sparta, couldn't figure out that he needed to temporarily stop the bout and fix the rope, even though I explained it to him. Both teams needed the rope to do our best spots, and without it, the whole match turned into an embarrassing night of miscues, until finally, the Rockers beat us. As far as the Hitman was concerned, the match could have easily been salvaged one way or another. I was furious at Freddie. I hoped that before the match aired in a couple of weeks, we could somehow do it over. I wanted it to be a great moment for both the Rockers, Shawn in particular, whom I respected. The Hitman was also hoping to drop the titles in order to begin a singles career. However, that would have to wait, as the WWF opted to keep the titles on the Hart Foundation until the following year at WrestleMania 7, when they dropped the belts to the Nasty Boys. In his memoir, Heartbreak and Triumph, Shawn Michaels recalls what happened. We understood why they didn't want to air the match, because it really was that bad, but we couldn't understand why we couldn't just do the match over. Later on, we heard that Jim and Bret had politicked to keep the titles, but I don't know whether they did. Like many wrestling stories, there are different accounts of whether the WWF intended to put the belts on the Rockers. Wrestling historians Greg Oliver and Steven Johnson write in their book, The Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, The Tag Teams, the WWF had the Rockers beat the champions, the Hart Foundation, at a house show, and apparently win the titles as insurance against Jim Neidhart's threat to leave the promotion. The title change was never acknowledged. Unfortunately, the title change was not held up and has become a footnote in wrestling history. Rhythm and Blues. The unlikely pairing of the Honky Tonk Man and Greg the Hammer Valentine as Rhythm and Blues was a sign that the WWF was starting to cross a line from larger-than-life entertainment to downright hokiness. To be sure, past acts like the Hillbillies had been too much for some fans, but when tough-as-nails heel Greg Valentine dyed his hair black and began strumming a guitar, this was too much for all but the most ardent WWF fan. Valentine wasn't a big fan of the angle, but went along with it, leading to him and Honky Tonk Man making quite the odd couple. The team didn't exactly light the wrestling world on fire, but they did have an unforgettable moment at WrestleMania 6 when they rode in a pink Cadillac, driven by future wrestling star Diamond Dallas Page, to perform their theme song, Hunka Hunka Hunky Love. As ridiculous as the team looked, wrestling lore has it that the WWF planned to put the tag titles on Jimmy Hart's team, perhaps hoping for lightning to strike twice, much as it did with Honky Tonk Man's unlikely, but nevertheless successful, record-breaking reign as Intercontinental Champion. Once again, fate intervened, and as told in the article One Hit Wonders, the Rhythm and Blues Tag Team. According to both Honky and Valentine, Rhythm and Blues were booked to win the tag team titles. That was a plan, but plans immediately changed once the Road Warriors became available and were signed to the WWF. The WWF then made the incredibly baffling decision to turn longtime heel Valentine babyface in preparation for a program against the Honky Tonk Man. However, Honky Tonk left the WWF in late 1990 before the two could throw down. Valentine then spent most of the time putting over heel opponents before leaving the WWF in 1992. What do you make of our list? Would you have liked to seen any of these teams hold the WWF Tag Team Championship? Share your thoughts in the comments section and let us know if there's any videos you'd like to see Wrestling's Greatest Moments cover. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and spread the good news about Wrestling's Greatest Moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.